RAM is really annoying. It doesn't allow you to hook up a scanner. Don't know why they did. I don't even know how it's legal.
That's the Right to Repair Act, you know.
Yeah, Right to Repair Act. So RAM. I almost said Ford. Them too. What's up, guys? Caleb from Lavski Autos. Today we're going to go over some of the trucks and the issues we have with them and common issues. We'll also go over some of the intake stuff that we do. You guys say we don't go over trucks a lot. Come here and they have issues, but we go over every truck we get. We have a full intake list, put it up on screen. You guys can see that, and let's go over the common things we see on all these trucks. All right, first truck to talk about is the 6.7 Power Stroke.
Yeah, I'm so fresh like the morning. I'm wide open like the yawning. Every time they see me, they get homie, I feel too alive.
Oil changes, big hot topic. A lot of people, you know, every 3,000 miles, every 5,000 miles. Ford says 7,500 to 10,000 on the 6.7. I wouldn't do that. I personally say every 5, you're probably good. Diesels have special detergents and additives in the oil, and as you go that long, the soot gets into the oil. That's why diesel oil is always black, and that deteriorates, doesn't lube as well, and can cause issues in the engine. So we always recommend every 5,000 miles. 6.7, we use 10W30. I recommend Shell Rotella. That seems to be the best. That's what most people use. Air filters. A lot of people run aftermarket air filters. I don't like them. I prefer just the stock air filter. Does the job. A lot of people run the oil air filters. Would not recommend that. A lot of times those oils get pulled through and they go onto the MAF sensor, and that will cause check engine lights, reduce powers, a bunch of issues you don't want. So I recommend staying away from those. Next up on the 6.7 is the crankcase filters. Those are super common. People don't change them. The 2023 style they changed. These two, before then, they were a paper-filled filter, and they would get clogged up, cause excess pressure in the crankcase. That can blow out your upper oil pan. That's why a lot of 6.7s have upper oil pan leaks.
We've got a pretty noticeable drip running down the transmission bell housing on both sides, ultimately forming at the corner of the oil pan right above the drain plug and dripping onto the floor.
Also, your rear main seal can be blown out. So I recommend doing a 2023 style. That gives you, it's a baffle, it's not a paper filter. Increases flow, less likely to blow out some of your seals. I feel it's more of a serious video.
This is more of a how not to video, so a how to video.
Yeah. Next thing on the maintenance list everyone needs to be doing is fuel filters. I recommend changing them every other oil change, so about every 10,000 miles. I always use the Motorcraft fuel filters. Don't get any of the Amazon, eBay cheap shit. No bueno. Do not use those. A lot of times the O-rings that come with them are either bad quality or just not the right size. You'll get leaking filters and they just don't filter as well. That can lead to CP4s blowing up, having a disco party. Do not want that. That will cause you to have an $8,000 repair. And I guess leading on from the fuel filters, you can do CP4 disaster prevention kits. We can install those here if you want. A lot of people lately have been getting that. That's something we offer. All that does is filter, so if your CP4 does blow up, the metal contaminants do not get into the entire fuel system, wiping out injectors. All your fuel lines have to be replaced. Fuel tank has to be dropped, so that can save you. It's a cheap way to have peace of mind if you don't want to do the better option, which is a DCR conversion. DCR pretty much should never have an issue. Once you do it, you're pretty much done. It's good to go. I haven't heard anyone I know personally ever having an issue with them, and if you do, I'm sure you can reach out to DCR, they'll help you out. Another issue on the 6.7 that's really common is the cold air cooler pipes. That's the one on the driver's side coming up from the intercooler into the turbo. It has rubber boots on it that are just made from the factory. You can get replacements that are all metal. I recommend doing a full intake kit. Everyone has issues with those. I've had a bunch of them that have blown out. It's always a common issue.
And we ended up installing the pusher cold air intake, as you can see there.
Also some tuning problems. A lot of people do the 5 switches. I don't like them. I don't see a reason to do it. I mean, it just changes your fuel table, and I don't see a reason to it. I honestly can't even tell the difference in most struts between 1 and 5. I just do a basic 50 horsepower tow tune if I tune a truck. That's what works for me. It's worked for everybody else. You shouldn't blow it up. And a lot of people do trans tunes. I don't like a trans tune. I think the main problem with them is most people flash a trans tune and they don't know that, especially on the Lima Duties, you have a 500-mile break-in period where the transmission's relearning all the shift points, and people will flash a trans tune, tow a trailer, and wonder why it starts shifting bad. It's because the transmission didn't learn correctly. There's a very specific way you have to drive in that 500-mile break-in period. And if you don't do that, it can cause a bunch of issues with the transmission, especially the 10 speeds. Those seem to be the worst. 6-speed transmissions in the 6.7s aren't too bad. Another issue, water in the fuse box. I don't know why Ford designed their fuse box the way they did, but it was stupid. Especially a lot of people take them off, don't put the lid on right, water gets in there, and it'll fry everything.
So you can see right here, a little bit of water got in here and it bridged those two terminals. And then it looks like it bridged several of these terminals. One of them sends power to the PCM. And so when it bridged, it shorted and caused the PCM to lose power. And that caused our engine to shut off. A little bit of corrosion there as well. So check out this side. Lots of corrosion, so there was definitely no saving this one.
Also, another issue with water on the Fords is the taillights. A lot of people get a crack in their taillight, it runs down. There's the CAN bus runs through the taillight. When that CAN bus gets corroded, it'll cause a bunch of issues. We actually had a video on that on this channel a couple months ago. Weird issue, can cause windows not to work, radio not to work, AC not to work, bunch of weird problems, bunch of check-in engine lights. So if you have a cracked taillight and you have it's mainly on the LEDs. I don't think the halogens have that issue. Be sure to check out, fix your taillight, don't have it cracked. Yeah, on that video we had a guy that he'd taken it to the Ford dealer. He had taken it to other independent shops. No one could figure out what his issue was, and all it turned out to be was just a taillight. So if you're having weird issues with your taillight on a 6.7, check to see if your taillight's broken. There's definitely water in there. Took it apart, and inside was all corroded. So the communication line for the whole truck talks to every module. Popped a new one in from another truck just to test, confirmed, and that was indeed the problem. Only on a Ford would a taillight cause AC, radio, windows not to work.
Check your taillights first, and then we'll go from there.
Another common problem on 6.7, especially the steel bodies, they tend to wear out track bars and tie rod ends and get a bad death wobble. That's pretty easy fix. Make sure you get good alignment after, but that's pretty common. 2011, 2014 turbos, the bearings wear out prematurely. Pretty common issue, but just a turbo, you know, not that big of a deal. I mean, kind of a pain in the ass to replace, but it is what it is. And then the last, the bane of my existence, P0087. The worst code I deal with on a daily basis. We get one of these trucks. Seems like every 6.7 we get has P0087. It is low fuel rail pressure. The reason it's such a pain in my ass is it could be a bunch of different things. It could be fuel filters not letting enough flow get to the CP4. It could be the lift pump not supplying enough pressure to the CP4. It could be the fuel pressure relief valve. It could be the fuel control actuator on the CP4. It could be a fuel pressure sensor. It could also be, I've seen leaking valves on the fuel rail itself. There's a little port that can leak. It can go bad. Or it could just be a CP4 like on a truck we had a couple weeks ago. I did all these diagnoses. I went through all these different things. It could also be injectors leaking. I went through all these things. I replaced the injector. I replaced the fuel rail. I replaced the fuel control actuator. And then fixed one of them. Went on a test drive, came back, and CP4 blew up as I was pulling into the lot. So be very wary of that. If you think it might be a CP4, stop driving it. Check your fuel filters. If there's any metal, don't touch it. Just leave it. You could do more damage. You could get away with just doing a DCR conversion. If you keep driving and it fully blows up, you're done. That is an $8,000 fix. Everything has to be replaced. Overall, 6.7 Power Stroke, probably one of my favorite engines. They are kind of a pain to work on, but they seem to be pretty reliable. I know I just listed a bunch of issues, but they're pretty rare. All in all, you know, we get them. We go through a lot of trucks, so I see more than the average person. Most of the time, you might have a couple little problems, but nothing major like this. It's very common, but it's just things I've seen while working at Lavski. So I don't steer anyone away. Honestly, Power Stroke is what I lean most people toward. I think it's the best of both worlds. You get a good transmission most of the time and a good engine most of the time. So the others can't say the same, especially Dodge with their transmissions, which I guess we'll lead into next. All right, guys, 6.7 Cummins. Oil changes, same thing, every 5,000 miles is what I recommend. 2019, a lot of people don't know, they switched to recommending 10W30 in those. Up until then, it was 1540. The reason they switched is Ram went to a new hydraulic lifter. They suck. A lot of people recommend swapping them out. There's aftermarket solutions to go to a flat tappet style. Very much recommended. The hydraulic roller lifters just tick. It's common. We've had a bunch of them. No bueno. Fuel filters, do it every other oil change, just like Ford, all the diesels, just do it every other oil change. Ram does have a really stupid design for their fuel filter. They decided to place it directly above the drive shaft for the rear filter, and you can drain out the fuel, still going to leak all over you. I get covered in fuel every single time I do it. If you guys have a tip or trick to not get covered in fuel, let me know. I haven't figured out a way to do it, so I kind of just try to avoid those. I make someone else do it. Turbo actuators, super common on those. I'd say 30-40% of the Rams we get seem to have that issue. I guess people see that issue, think it's the turbo, trade it in. It does throw turbo code, so I would think that's the problem. But a lot of people don't know. It's normally just the actuator. They get eat up with soot, and there's a little sector gear inside, I guess is what it'd be called. Swings back and forth, little motor turns it, and they just stop moving. A lot of times I've seen that people that don't use their exhaust brake, it tends to happen because that gear is not sweeping. If you use your exhaust brake, I'd recommend turning it on once a week just for a drive, just to get that gear, keep it moving. Don't let anything get built up. Should hopefully make it last longer. If not, it's not that bad of a repair. It takes an hour or two if you know what you're doing.
So on these, you always want to make sure this is for the vanes inside the turbocharger. You see that line? You want to make sure it can go through that line, and then there's another line down here. It's that one right there. You want to make sure that this actuator goes side to side. You want it to roll smooth, just like that. See how easy that is?
The 5th gen Cummins, a lot easier to do. I guess Ram figured out that it was such a big issue, they made it a lot easier to place. The bolt is not underneath what is that, the shock mount, I guess. So it's a lot easier on those. 4th gen, still doable, but yeah, the code for that is P003A. So if you're getting that is your gear's not getting the full range of motion. That is a sign that you do need an actuator. I keep those in stock, so it's that common. Another issue is the EGR valves. So there's the main valve and there's the bypass valve. Both of them have problems because there's just a lot of carbon buildup that goes through there. It's just flaps that get junked up and stop moving. A lot of times you can take them apart and clean them. I actually did one yesterday and it fixed one part of it, but then the bypass is broken. So those are common, pretty easy fixes. Most of the time cleaning can do it, but if not, you just got to replace the whole thing. Ram is really annoying. They lock all their code reading on I think it started in 2018. They had the security gateway module. It doesn't allow you to hook up a scanner. Don't know why they did. I don't even know how it's legal, to be honest. It makes no sense that you can't even scan your own vehicle. So we have to pay $1,200 a year just to be able to scan with a $4,000 scanner. You can't even do it unless you pay $1,200 a year. Really stupid.
That's the Right to Repair Act, you know.
Yeah, Right to Repair Act.
Is in Congress.
Yeah, it's going through. Hopefully it all goes through and Ram is forced to let us be able to scan our own vehicles that we bought with our hard-earned money. But we'll see. Hopefully that changes. Right now, you're screwed. So even if you do, you buy a $100,000 truck from Ram, you get it home, you have an issue, you want to fix it yourself, hook up your scanner. Oh, nope, you can't read nothing because Ram doesn't think you're smart enough to do it. So you have to come to me where I have to pay a bunch of money just to be able to do it. Something you probably could have just done at home. So, Ram. I almost said Ford. Them too. It's just on my mind. That's all I'm thinking about is Ford. Other issues with the Rams. Obviously, transmission problems. 68 RFE. Awful transmission. Ison. People say it's better. I don't agree. I think they suck too. I've ridden in a bunch of them. They seem to shift just the same. Both of them suck. If you're going to get a Ram, get a G56. We have a bunch of them. 68 RFE. They're not all. I'm being me. They aren't all bad. There are some good 68 RFEs, but they're going to break eventually. Because they all will. It doesn't matter what you use them for. If you tow, it's just going to break sooner. If you don't tow, it's still going to break. That's all there is to it. That's just a Ram problem. Yeah, if you do manage to scan your Ram, you're able to. Maybe you have 2018 or before, or you pay $1,200 a year to do it, and you see an incorrect gear ratio, you're done. You need a new transmission. That being said, Cummins probably does have the best engine. It's definitely the best to work on. It is my favorite to work on because there's so much room. Everything's easy to get to. You can get to a turbo easy. All the EGR stuff is right on top, easy to get to. Anything you need is really easy to get to on a Ram compared to Duramax and Ford. So I do prefer working on them when they do break, and they really don't break that often. I think Cummins is probably the best engine out of the three. They just have the worst transmission behind them. They do have the same problems with CP4. Personally, I've never had a problem with the fuel system on a Ram. I can't remember ever having any CP4 problems or any fuel pressure codes or anything like that, like I do the Fords and the Duramaxes, but it is a CP4. They will go out, but I just think it's a little more rare on a Ram for some reason. Another big issue on the Rams, probably the biggest, if I bought a Ram, this would be the first thing I did, is the grid heater. On the grid heater, there's a nut that goes into a stud, and I guess it's the heat and vibration. It just works its way loose. When it falls, I think it typically goes into cylinder number 5, and it will fall right on the piston and blow it up.
This small bolt can cost Ram owners up to $30,000 in engine damage. This is the grid heater bolt from a Cummins 6.7-liter turbo diesel engine, and if it fails, it falls into your intake manifold and rolls downhill into your cylinder. At best, it'll get wedged into your intake valve or bounce around the cylinder, damaging your piston, cylinder wall, and head. But at worst, this bolt could cause enough damage to require total engine replacement.
So, if you do have a Ram and you don't have an aftermarket grid heater, I would get one. I know Banks makes probably the best one.
So just getting all the bolts started. Now, that back one back there, you can't really get anything on it, but Banks does give you this long Allen key extension. So basically, you just put it back there. And then the one in the middle, I use a magnet and I just feed it down in there, and then I start it like that.
They have 2 different ones. They have a double grid heater if you live in a really cold climate. I saw a video theirs the other day. They had a truck in -40 and it started, which is crazy, with their grid heater. So definitely recommend getting a replacement grid heater if you don't want to blow up your entire engine. And then last on the Rams is the exhaust manifold. They're known to leak. They are a one-piece design, and the Cummins is a long block. So heat just over and over, it starts to stretch and warp and will blow out the gasket. You can upgrade that to a 2-piece style, a lot stronger, a lot less likely to ever have a problem with it. So I wouldn't go out and replace it until it starts to leak, but when it leaks, I go ahead and get a 2-piece. Other than that, really the Ram's probably my favorite engine. If I had to get a truck, it'd probably be a Ram with a G56. Get a manual Ram, and you will probably be good for a while. I've seen a lot of those with 500,000 miles on them, and they're still going strong. All right, last up is the Duramax 6.6 liter. My least favorite. A lot of people love Chevy. I just don't. I hate working on them. As far as maintenance, routine stuff, oil changes every 5,000 miles. Set it over and over. That's what you should do. Use Shell Rotella. Those are 1540, I believe. Once again, keep air filter stock. I don't like the oiled ones. For some reason, Duramax seems to have a lot more issues with MAF sensors, even if you do just have a stock filter. A lot of times we've had multiple crank no starts and just 0 power if the MAF sensor is bad. Luckily, easy fix, but something to look out for. Another common issue on them is the glow plug. For some reason, every single Chevy GN that comes in has a glow plug code. Sometimes multiple. Thankfully, that's pretty easy also, but it's just something you're gonna have to deal with. Don't really need them in our climate. You know, if you're down south, don't really need a glow plug, but up north, you guys definitely do need them. Fuel filters, every other oil change. Duramaxes, especially the earlier ones, do have the primer bulb up on top of the fuel filter. Those seals in those go bad all the time. It's a very common issue. It will cause you not to start. We fixed one the other day on that Kodiak. And also there's a plastic bleeder screw that goes in there, and those can go bad and break. I've had to replace a couple of those. I keep those just in my drawer because of how common those are. Injector pigtails, also super common. Cylinder number 4, especially on the L5Ps. And I believe the LMLs also has that issue. I guess just the way it's routed and the heat makes them break. Pretty easy fix. Just have to go and cut in a new pigtail, splice it in. We've done many of those throughout our time. Boost leaks are really common, especially the turbo inlet that goes right into the turbo. It's awful to get to. It's a V-band clamp that holds it on, and it's just a pain in the ass to get if it does start leaking. I've had a couple of those I've had to do custom every single time. Normally takes a while, but eventually you'll get it on there. I have a smoke machine that I use for any boost leak. It is a great tool. If you don't have if you work on your own truck or any car and you don't have a smoke machine, get one. It will save you so much time. Evap leaks, boost leak, vacuum leaks, very good tool to have. Head gaskets on the earlier Duramaxes, known to blow. A lot of times you'll see pressure in the coolant reservoir. I believe, when did they start? Was it L5P, LML, where it has the 2-part, if you ever get coolant in the side of the coolant reservoir, yeah, closest to the engine, if there's ever coolant in there, Normally it's a sign you probably have a blown head gasket. It's a very common issue that we always look out for. That's something, again, once you see all these things, it's something that we always look for whenever we get a new truck in. That's one of the first things we do. We check blow by, and then instantly, next thing we look at on an LML is going to be, is there coolant in that side of the reservoir? Really common thing, LML, LMMs, LBZ, all those have a lot of head gasket issues. We get a lot of issues when we're putting tunes on trucks. For some reason, the L5Ps, the CAN bus, you have two knock sensors, and see the fuel pressure or the fuel control module, all the CAN bus wires go through there when other people delete them. You have to put in the CAN bus plugs, and a lot of the CAN bus plugs you do get are cheap. I've run into that issue before. I ordered some cheap CAN bus plugs. I'll never do that again because I plugged them in and then chased wiring for a week straight trying to figure out what was going on. So easiest way is to either get good CAN bus plugs, or there's a way where you can just hardwire it. That's cheaper and a lot better. So I recommend doing that if you're going to delete your truck, which I wouldn't recommend because that's illegal. You get a lot of reduced engine powers for some reason on GMs. A lot of fuel pressure sensors go out. I've replaced a lot of those. Something to look out for. I think it's P0087 on those also that normally go, but normally those are just a fuel pressure sensor. They also have the CP4. You can do a CP3 conversion. I think they started CP4 on the LML. Once again, I don't know why it's always Ford that has the CP4 everyone complains about, but they all have it for some reason though. GM seems to have a better one. So I haven't really seen too many issues with the CP4s on those. I have seen some turbos go out. We actually have an LML with a turbo out right now getting fixed. Once again, you know, just happens, wear and tear. On non-deleted trucks, DPF and DEF sensors, NOx sensors, your particulate matter sensor, all that seems to have pretty good amount of problems. I get a lot of trucks with those, and I think that's really it. I think I went over everything on the Duramax. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. All in all these trucks are pretty good. They all have their issues and quirks, but, you know, it's a vehicle. Especially ours. A lot of miles. It happens. If you do want to see any specific issue that you're having or you have questions, put it down in the comments. If you want to see a certain how-to video on how to refit some of these or diet some of these issues, leave us a comment. I'm sure we can record some of these problems. Hopefully this gave you guys some issues to look out for, whether you're buying from us or someone else. Make sure you check these things, at least the ones that you can check. If you want to buy anything from us, go to LavskiAutosandCampers.com, call us 404-543-7606, or visit us in Jefferson, Georgia, 1916 Washington Street. Thank you.